Maciej, Mikos, and you're watching World Talks. 3 Czech parties have reached a coalition agreement, thus paving a way to forming a government next week. What will it look like and what will be its policies? To talk about it, we're joined by Ján Michalčák, former head of a unit for countering hybrid threats at the Czech Defense Ministry. Good afternoon.
Pleasure to be with you, as always.
So, first of all, who forms the ruling coalition and what are the main differences between the 3 parties?
It's a great question. Really simply, the frontrunner in the coalition will be the ANO party of Andrej Babiš, former prime minister, who's already had 2 governments in the past and has absolutely dominated the recent election that we had at the beginning of October. Babiš won by a landslide with almost 35% of the vote, which is the 3rd highest election win in the history of Czechia. And he will most likely be joined by 2 parties, first of which is the SPD party, which is a really right-wing extremist party led by Tomio Okamura, a Czech with a migration background, which is important to point out because the party has built its image on really spreading pro-Russian disinformation and including xenophobic and racist remarks. Its leader, Tomio Okamura, is actually being prosecuted by the police now for precisely spreading racist posters and racist messages during a recent election campaign. So not the latest one, but the recent one. And so that's the second party. And the third party is a party called the Motorists for Themselves, which is a really peculiar party. Originally, it was actually a satirical party on a local level in Prague, as the name suggests, built mainly around expanding rights for drivers in Czechia, whatever that means, and now is really anti-establishment and anti-anything perceived as a little bit green, so really opposed to the Green Deal, opposed to any limitations on gas combustion engines, for example, etc., etc. So this is most likely going to be the coalition.
Right. Now, there's a certain dose of uncertainty surrounding this new coalition. We have a soundbite from Martin Kupka. Let's give it a listen.
One thing is the proclamations, where it is certainly possible to agree, and we will certainly agree that the Czech Republic must be firmly anchored in those Western structures. But it then depends on how that policy is implemented and who represents it and what, for example, Mr. Turek's representation would mean in negotiations with the governments of other countries, what our real position would be at that moment. So, of course, we will monitor this, and we must monitor it, and the President will certainly monitor it in the context of those further negotiations.
Now, would you call this a stable coalition? Will they survive without, very early elections like next year or in 2 years?
That's a great question. Just for context, Martin Kupka, whom we've just heard, is actually the transport minister in the outgoing government representing the Civic Coalition Party, so he's not going to be in the new government. But to your question, it is going to be, I believe, inherently unstable, as just from the introduction of the the 3 parties that I gave you a minute ago, you can probably sense that it's really a hodgepodge of really different parties with vastly differing priorities. We have the ANO party of Andrej Babiš, which is by definition a catch-all party. Babiš has always tried his best to really attract any and all voters of any convictions. And that also meant for him that he had to toughen up his election rhetoric in preparation for the election. Then we have the SPD. As I said, they've never been afraid of being really extreme on the fringes of right-wing politics. They've been even named as a threat to Czech security by the Czech counterintelligence agency. So that just to paint a picture. And then we have the Motorists as a new party and originally satirical. We don't know what to expect from them. And to come to Kupka's point about Filip Turek, really briefly, he is the main face of the Motorists. And as journalists found out immediately after the election, he has had some really troubling, and I wouldn't be afraid to call it neo-Nazi views in the past. He has been seen multiple times performing what seems like the Hitler salute. He has celebrated Hitler himself on his social media. He has, for example, wrote about wanting to send certain groups of the population to gas chambers, and I'm really not exaggerating that. And this person wants to be Czech foreign minister. Now, it remains to be seen what happens, because it has been a public secret that not Babiš and not even the president, Petr Pavel, want Turek to be in the government for obvious reasons. But the party, the motorists, still insist on him being part of the government. And that could be potentially problematic, because without the motorists, Babiš will not form his majority government. So he needs them. But at the same time, he doesn't really want problematic people like Filip Turek to be with him in the government. So we are in for a really interesting couple of weeks, I think.
So you say it's a difficult coalition with many extreme ideas and much controversy surrounding it. But what reforms should we expect from this new ruling coalition in the next few months?
Great question. Maybe just to add to what I've just said. Yes, there are some really problematic people in the government. Most likely, if the government is formed, which we'll still know for 100% certainty, but it is looking likely at the moment. But still, Babiš and ANO will be the dominating force by far. And no matter what we think about Babiš, just because he is leading a catch-all party, as I said, he wants to be more or less moderate on the really important issues, such as EU and NATO membership. So, for example, he has ruled out any talk and not to mention a referendum on our membership in those organizations. He wants it to remain as it is. So he wants to see Czechia firmly anchored in both EU and NATO. So the basic structure is not going to change. What I think could change is the rhetoric, because by definition of what other parties there are forming the coalition with Babiš, and also by just simply the fact that Babiš is a leader of a catch-all party, he has to make his rhetoric more aggressive, so that voters who would otherwise vote for the more extreme parties would vote for him instead. That's what he did in the run-up to the election, and I think that's what he will need to do even after the election. So if anything, we should expect the rhetoric to change slightly in comparison to the outgoing government. That's one thing. And the second thing, because Babiš is a catch-all party leader, he's promised everything and anything to his voters. He's promised massive government spending in the amounts of billions of euros even, which the Czech economy simply cannot afford. That's been confirmed by many economists all around the political spectrum, and still Babiš has promised it. And if he wants to deliver on those promises, it's going to be definitely a strain on the Czech budget. So we'll see what happens, but definitely more government spending and less fiscal responsibility are to be expected, just based on Babiš's own promises.
But in terms of international foreign relations, now, as you said, there will be no Czechzit from the EU. The relations with NATO will stay as they are. But what about Prague's approach to Ukraine and Russia, because these are two separate issues? What about the ammunition for Ukraine initiative?
Again, a great question. I think for context, it is important for viewers to realize that the ammunition initiative, so very briefly, Czechia acting as a coordinator in a search for ammunition that then goes to Ukraine and is bought by Czechia and then transmitted to Ukraine, has been a massive success. And partly also because Czechia has not been the main financial contributor. The role of the Czechs has been mainly to really coordinate, and in general, Czechia has actually earned money simply because all the purchases that go through Czechia are taxed in Czechia. So financially, it's been a benefit. But Babiš has been speaking really negatively about the initiative. I think partly because, as I said, his rhetoric simply had to be more aggressive so that he wins more votes of the more extreme parties. But funnily enough, it is mostly also about his own ego. Because, for context, Andrej Babiš is one of the wealthiest people in Czechia. He's, I think, the fifth wealthiest person. And then we have a person called Michal Strnad, who is the director leader of the biggest Czech ammunition company. Michal Strnad is only about 30 years of age and has inherited the company from his own father of the same name. Now, because and thanks to the ammunition initiative, this company has benefited massively financially, and Strnad has become the wealthiest person in Czechia, overtaking Babiš, among others. And from reports that we've heard from the media, Babiš is personally now offended by Michal Strnad just because he doesn't respect him and sees him as someone who's become more wealthier than he is, partly and largely because of the inheritance that he got from his family. That's why he's been speaking negatively of the ammunition initiative, because it benefits, in Babiš's eyes, Michal Strnad, the now wealthiest person. So we've heard that even the president, Petr Pavel, has been trying to talk some sense into Andrej Babiš and explaining to him that it is not only Strnad, but the entire Czech economy, and potentially even Andrej Babiš, be it financially or in terms of prestige, that would profit if the ammunition initiative is preserved. And we've heard Babiš now already soften his rhetoric on Ukraine following the election. So I'm remaining cautiously positive, optimistic that nothing significant will hopefully change in Czechia's stance and support to Ukraine. But we'll see. We'll need to wait and see.
Cautiously optimistic Ján Michalčák, former head of Unit for Countering Hybrid Threats, the Czech Defense Ministry, was our guest this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Pleasure as always.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews here on TVP World.